Hello, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Dave Thomas, lead pastor of Cross of Christ Lutheran Church in beautiful Bellevue, Washington. And my kitchen, or anybody's kitchen for that matter, might seem at first like an unusual place to have a Lenten midweek video be shot and shared with you, but maybe it's not so strange after all. For Cross of Christ and many other congregations, soup suppers are a big part of our midweek Lenten experiences. Prior to worship, we gather for soup made by one of several teams of volunteers who shared their culinary talents with us over the years. Welcome circles, choir, council, men's groups, youth team, all sorts of different folks, staff. And we've always enjoyed this time. It's always been a time of fun and food and fellowship and of comfort. It's, however, not going to be possible this year for us to gather in such a way. As with so many other things, this year we'll miss our Lenten soup suppers and our midweek in-person worship experiences. To help fill the gap, we're offering these online gatherings we're calling Comfort Food, sharing food, fellowship, and comfort together. Today and for the following 4 Wednesdays during Lent, we'll be in someone's kitchen as they share a favorite soup recipe. Pastor Judy, Ben, our Worship and Music Ministries Director, Colin Walker, our Congregational President and recording team superglue and superhero, and I will share what we have found to be comforting in these uncomfortable times as we go along. And as we cook and as we worship together, and as we comfort one another, we'll also remember those who do not have as much as we do, even those who do not enjoy the basic necessities of life, like a regular, simple, warm, nourishing meal. So each week we'll also highlight an organization or two that Cross of Christ is blessed to be in partnership with in an effort to share the gospel in deed and to serve others. This first week, I'm going to be making Rebecca's creamy curried butternut squash soup. Now, Rebecca is an amazing Christian woman many of us have met and been blessed to be a part of our lives as we were a part of Cross of Christ travel teams to Tanzania. Rebecca is a very skilled cook and a professional baker in Monduli, Tanzania, very near to Maasai Girls Lutheran Secondary School, which we've also been blessed to be a supporter of for more than a decade now. Rebecca has cooked for most, maybe all of our travel teams, including for our last journey in 2016, when I was blessed to be a part of that team and to return to Africa, where I had lived and worked in the 1990s with Food for the Hungry, Christian Relief and Development Organization. And among the blessings was meeting Rebecca, who, in spite of serious health challenges that has resulted in the loss of both of her legs, is a shining example of a Christian follower of Jesus, a committed mom to her family and a mother figure to so many others. She's a community leader. She's an entrepreneur. She's a joy to be with. And she's also a terrific cook. Now, almost every supper that Rebecca would prepare for our teams begins with soup. Maybe that's an influence from Tanzania's history as a British colony. And many of Rebecca's soups are purees or creamy concoctions using local ingredients as well as the influences of many culinary parts of Tanzania. Traditional foods, English items, and like this soup, Indian cuisine. So thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Let's get right to it. This is Rebecca's creamy curried butternut squash soup. All right, then let's check out the list of ingredients. We're going to start with browning up our butternut squash and our sweet potatoes. I've also called this soup a harvest soup because it has more than butternut squash, but that is the backbone of it. So we're going to have about a tablespoon or so of olive oil and a little bit of butter. So let's go ahead and get that started on our stove. We're going to use a big cooking pot here. And about a tablespoon of olive oil. Then we're going to add a little bit of butter. This is, of course, Tillamook butter from the Pacific Northwest, and we're just going to add a little dab of butter. That'll help with the browning. Now our butternut squash, this is a organic big chewy butternut from Mexico, can just be cut up in chunks. They don't have to be diced too small. I've started some and we'll finish this off here. So we're just gonna get it into some reasonable chunks so that we can brown it up. And while we do that, we're gonna just put enough in the pot to cover the bottom. You might have to use a couple of goes of this as we fill that up. That's probably enough for that group. We'll toss a couple more in there. There we go. We don't want them to stack up, we need them to brown. So let's toss that on there. And we'll add just a little bit of kosher salt or coarse sea salt. Again, we're gonna toss that, get it all coated and let that cook on medium high. And while we do, we'll chop up the rest of our squash. I don't know if you like to use squash. I'm not a user of mini squashes. Butternut's about the only one I ever use, and usually just for this soup and baked butternut squash. So while I finish chopping up, we'll take a little time out and then we'll come back and see how we're doing. All right, we've been browning up our butternut squash for about 10 minutes now. It takes about 10 minutes. So let's take a look and see how it's doing over here. And it is just about done. It's all browned up and nice. And then we're just gonna set that aside. Toss that right there. And start again with our next batch of squash here. Put that in there. Add just a little bit more olive oil. Another dab of butter because butter makes it better. We'll brown that up and then we're going to do the same with our sweet potatoes. So I'm going to take care of that and then we'll come back and see what's the next step. All right guys, we finished our butternut squash. It's all browned up and ready to go. So the next step for us is we're going to do the same with our sweet potatoes. So let's get our sweet potatoes in there. That's about a cup, 3/4 of a cup to a cup of sweet potatoes. I'll turn those down a little bit now that the pot's been going for a while. Again, I added a little bit of butter and I'm going to salt them. Stir them up a little bit here. Make sure they're nicely covered. We'll brown them up. The butternut squash takes about 10 minutes per round. And the sweet potatoes take a little bit less. We're going to go about 7 or 8 minutes. While we do that, I'll show you what we're going to do next. We're going to add onions. This is just one yellow onion, and it doesn't have to be too finely diced. We're just going to kind of chop it here in kind of a rough chop. Get that ready to go. That is a very strong onion. And we'll also be adding carrots and some garlic. And I haven't finished working up my garlic, so let's get that. I want this pretty small. I love garlic. I love the smell of it, and I love the taste of it. I would say it's probably one of my comfort foods. But I don't want a big chunk of it at a time. So we're going to work our knife through there a couple of times. Get that nice and small. And those are good and ready to go. They're going to be going in at separate times. The onion goes first, and then we'll add the carrot and the garlic. So let's take a look over here how we're doing. Oh yeah, these are coming along nicely already. Give you a little peek. There you go. Pretty good. A few more minutes of browning for the sweet potatoes. I think one of the reasons I find this comforting food, besides that it reminds me of Rebecca and Africa and our travel teams, is it also reminds me of how connected Cross of Christ is with so many folks around the world, locally, right in our neighborhood, with congregations for the homeless and Sophia Way, and regionally, especially with our work through the Synod, and then nationally, supporting different organizations, and of course internationally, not only with our emphasis in Africa, but with Lutheran World Relief and ELCA World Hunger and other organizations. And then, of course, organizations beyond that, like HopeLink, that we partner with. And even in this time of pandemic, maybe especially in this time of pandemic, one of the things I've found both comforting and warming for my spirit, one of the ways I'm finding comfort in this uncomfortable time, is by watching how you have continued to want to reach out and comfort others. Now, I don't want you to have to comfort me because I burnt my sweet potatoes, so let's give them another little twist. And they're going to need about 2 more minutes. Now, we're all in different places. Some of us are able to be out in a limited capacity and to volunteer, not in the ways we have in the past with those organizations, but I know some of you have supported Salvation Army in new ways and done things like that. Of course, our financial support has meant a lot to Cross of Christ and to other organizations. And we are really blessed, as we just shared recently, to have been able to make a disbursement recently to both the Plaster House Children's Surgical Rehabilitation Center in Arusha, Tanzania, and to the Maasai Girls Lutheran Secondary School in Monduli, just outside of Arusha, based on the contributions you made last summer as we were preparing for Tanzania Mission 2020. Unfortunately, our travel team has had to postpone their time apart to be able to go there, but our work has continued, and we released $11,000 to each of those organizations, a total of $22,000, to help them to continue to respond to the pandemic, but also for their ongoing ministries with girls' education and with surgical post surgical care for kids, mostly rural tribal kids in north central Tanzania. So thank you for that. I'm finding great comfort. Well, let's find out how we're doing over here. Yeah, it looks like the sweet potatoes are just about done. So let's also set them aside. Add them right there. Yeah. We're going to turn this down because this is just a saute. So again, I've got some residual oil, so I'm not going to add very much. That's what, a teaspoon maybe? But I am going to add butter because it's butter. Let that melt just a little bit, and we're going to add our onion. And I am not afraid to use a lot of onion, but I've been married a very long time, so I don't have to worry about onion breath. But I think it's fantastic. And it's going to reduce down. This is a puree, so we've added some onion here. It's on a fairly low simmer. We're going to just keep that working. We'll let that go for a couple minutes, and we'll come back and add our other ingredients. are doing great. I've also added carrots. The onions are about to the point where you want them to be. They are translucent. You don't get to use that term very often, translucent, but that's about how you describe these onions. I've added the carrots too, and they've come along. They've been in about 2 minutes. So now it's time to add some of our other ingredients. We're going to add in the garlic. That's a tablespoon plus of garlic. I've turned the heat all the way down to low because I definitely don't want to burn my garlic. And then we're also going to add some fresh ginger. So I have a ginger root here, and I've already shaved that, and I've got 1 teaspoon of fresh ginger. We'll put that in there. Let's give everything a good stir here. And this won't take long. I'm just going to kind of get that going. Oh, I wish you could smell that. Ginger and garlic together, that is awesome. Wow. I don't know if that's comforting. It is definitely making me hungry. Hey, another way that you guys are comforting me is in the way that you're comforting one another, and I just am so inspired by that. Of course, there's some official ways that we're continuing to reach out to each other. Pastor Judy and Happy Hour and our grief group and our caring card ministries. Thank you to you guys who are doing that. And also, though, the ways that you're informally taking care of each other, calling each other. I know some of you have picked up groceries and stuff for others and checked on folks and made sure everybody's okay. So thanks so much for that. Listen, now it's time for some of the real fun. We're going to add our seasonings. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of curry powder, and I am going to actually grab my tablespoon because I have a teaspoon. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of curry powder. There's 1. There's 2, and I like curry powder, so a pinch. Stir that in. And at this point, we can actually take this off the heat. We're going to turn that off for now. We're going to add a dash of mustard, ground mustard, so curry powder and ground ginger. We are also going to add a bit of ground mustard, about a ½ teaspoon, dash. You don't need much. That's enough. And then again, just a shake of cinnamon and even less of nutmeg. And we'll give that a swirl. Oh, that smells so fantastic. And don't worry about if your pot's starting to look a little bit like mine, because as we simmer, all that goodies will come up and off the bottom and be fantastic. All right, so let's add back in our sweet potatoes and butternut squash. I'll just slide those guys in there carefully. Precious cargo, we want them to get in there. So far, so good, surprisingly enough. Again, we'll just kind of mix things up just a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot because we're going to add. I'm going to move actually to a smaller burner. Set it on just low, medium low. And now we're going to add 3 to 4 cups of vegetable broth or stock. Okay, somebody can correct me. I'm not really sure I know the difference between broth and stock. This is vegetable broth. And I'm going to add 3 cups because You can always add more, but it's really hard to take it out. So 3 cups of vegetable broth. And then we're also going to add 1 cup of coconut milk, but not yet. We're going to give that a little bit of time to come to a full simmer. Just heat all the way through. Yeah, it looks like I am just a little shy on broth, so I'm going to add just a little bit more. That's maybe just a 1/4 cup. And then we're going to heat all that through, and then we'll come back and we'll add the coconut milk. All right, we have got our pot almost to a boil. We'll take a look over here. It is, well, I don't want it to a boil, but it's a full simmer. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give it a stir and turn it down now, just to a little bit above low. And then we're gonna cover it, and we're gonna set our timer here for 30 minutes. And in the magic of television, 30 minutes will go by just like that, and we'll take our next step. We're getting really close. While we do, I wanted to review the recipe, which will be before you, but especially the seasonings, because I kind of flew through those fast. So we have ground ginger. I used fresh ginger, so I used a little bit less ground ginger. The recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. I used a lot more than that. I used a good tablespoon. 2 tablespoons of curry powder, 1 teaspoon of ground mustard, a dash of ground cinnamon, a half a dash, a pinch of nutmeg, and kosher salt or coarse ground sea salt. This is coarse ground sea salt. Then we'll be adding some coarse ground pepper in just a little bit. So for now, we'll let that get on a simmer and go for about 30 minutes. We just want to get all those root vegetables soft and ready to be pureed. Now, speaking of root vegetables, of course, a squash is not a root vegetable, it's a gourd. But everything else we put in there, the sweet potatoes, the carrots and onions, are all root vegetables, not tubers and not related to potatoes, even though sweet potatoes and potatoes share the same name. So that can be confusing. And sweet potatoes really aren't all that closely related to yams either, although some people use those terms interchangeably and they do have a similar flavor, but botanically they're not close relatives. Sweet potato is part of the morning glory family. So there's your culinary trivia for today. Hey, it's not trivial, all the things that you're doing to comfort one another and also to comfort me. So the other thing I wanted to share about where I'm finding comfort in this uncomfortable time is through the ways that you're encouraging me. Several of you have taken on a new ministry of sending me cards and thank you cards and encouragement cards. And I really do appreciate that very much. I've also gotten lots of texts and emails and some phone calls, and that's also really great. I share those with the rest of the worship team and the worship recording team as well. And, you know, we're all doing the best we can, making a lot of this up as we go. And I've especially appreciated that you've shown support in understanding that this is a process, and we certainly don't all agree on how this process should go. We don't even know everything that we need to know to make all the perfect decisions. There's probably not a perfect decision to be made. But I do feel perfectly comforted that I know that you're supportive, that you're encouraging, and that you're praying for me. So thanks very much. Now I'm praying that soup gets to where it needs to be in 30 minutes. We'll check back in and take the final few steps together. Thanks. All right, I've been checking and the timer is about to go off. So let's take a look how we're doing here. Yeah, that is looking fantastic. Give that a little stir. So that's been going for 20 minutes. Now we're going to add our 1 cup of coconut milk. I'm using Thai coconut milk. Assuming it's going to have a little Thai flavoring to it. Mix that up a little bit here. And now we're going to also add some coarse ground pepper. Exactly that much. I've said this before on a couple of other ingredients, but I also like pepper, so I'm not afraid to put a little bit more. That was probably a little more than a tablespoon. All right, cover that back up. That's fantastic. That's going to go for 10 minutes. All right, in the meanwhile, bring you over here. We are also going to get some bread ready to go. So this is just a local baguette, and I have been brushing it with a mixture of olive oil, garlic powder, garlic salt, pepper, just a little bit of ground oregano as well, just to give it a little color. We're going to pop that in the oven just to warm up a little bit. So there we go, sitting pretty, and that'll be done in 10 minutes as well. So let's set you back up here. Well, a watch pot never boils, but it will simmer, so we'll let that simmer a little bit. And I wanted to highlight my 2 organizations for this week. We're going to be bringing up to you a couple of organizations each week that are battling hunger near nationally and internationally. And I've mentioned them both, but I want to raise the Maasai Girls Lutheran Secondary School and their funding entity and support group, which is Operation Bootstrap Africa, or OBA, and their director, Jason, very good friends of Cross of Christ. And we are very appreciative of the work they do, not only Maasai Girls School, but other schools for girls, but also co-ed throughout Africa. They are doing a great work in Madagascar as well, and we want to lift them up as a potential entity that you may want to support separately as well. And then Friends of the Plaster House is the new 501c3, or whatever the official nonprofit status is for this funding entity, through which we can send our support to the Plaster House there in Arusha. And our own Matt Pulley sits on the board of Friends of the Plaster House. So I encourage your support of these 2 entities that are battling hunger and poverty and injustices and inequities in both education and health for children in Tanzania. All right, 10 more minutes, 7.5 more minutes, and then we'll get to do what I think is the single most fun step. So I'll see you back in just a few. All right, guys, the timer is about to go off for our 10 minutes with there it is, with the coconut milk soup, and our bread has already been in for 10 minutes too. So let's take a look and see if we're ready to go. Oh yeah, that is looking just ideal. Check our vegetables and squash here. Oh yeah, there we go. Just fork soft and ready to go. And ready for what I said is my favorite part, the most fun part. Okay, eating is also my favorite part, but this guy right here, this is one of my favorite toys ever. This is an immersion blender. If you don't have one, you need one. You should go get one. you should order one online right away. So we set that sucker in there, hit the top, and we'll just give it a whirl. So here we go. This is where we're going to go from chunky curry to creamy curry. So you also have the option of leaving it a little chunky. I'm going to make it a la Rebecca, which means I'm going to make it super creamy. And so I'm going to keep blending, and you can keep watching and wishing you were doing the immersion blender. Take my slotted spoon and just see if it looks like, oh yeah, we have definitely got it to the consistency we're looking for. So let's get that blender out of here. Pop that off. Ready, go. All right, time for the taste test. Creamy curry, a little bit of the ginger coming through, a little bit of the cinnamon. We are ready to give it a go. So let's pop our bread out here. Man, I am not gonna change that at all. And I am a cooking tinkerer, and I think we got that spot on perfect. All right, so let's ladle up some of this guy right here. Here we go. Okay, I don't know if that's the perfect consistency, but that is, again, the Rebecca consistency, so that's what I am going for. And then we have some options for toppers. Some folks go with green onion, good option. I am a cilantro person. Now I know cilantro is a dividing line for a lot of folks. You may not find comfort in cilantro. I love cilantro and use it in lots of stuff. So I'm gonna add a little cilantro and a dollop, and I mean a dollop, a little dollop of sour cream, because a little dab will do you. So let's give that a stir. Let's grab a couple of pieces of bread there. All right. Come, Lord Jesus, be our guest, and let these gifts to us be blessed. Amen. Guys, that is so good. Comforting and creamy. We're going to take a little crunchy bite here. Fantastic. So good. So good. Let me grab my towel here. Guys, thanks for joining me today for the first of our comfort food series for our midweek Lenten time. I hope you found some comfort and some fun, and maybe a recipe you like too. We will post a recipe so that you can see the details and not try to have to take notes as I go flying along. I wish we were together for soup suppers this year, but I'm glad to be together this way. until we are together in our recorded worship and in-person worship too, hopefully before too much longer. Keep doing the things we need to do to take care of one another. Keep wearing your mask, keep socially distanced, keep away from crowds, keep praying for an end to this pandemic and a blessing to all those who are impacted by it. Until we're together again, God bless you. Thanks for being in my kitchen. I'll see you soon.